The world is alive again, like Frankenstein and Frankenstein Monster. Don't get that one wrong, it would drive people crazy. But this also means that the WWE touring machine is back on track. And recently they even came over here to the UK to do some house shows. Now, I never miss house shows because if you've never been, all the wrestlers do stuff they'd never do on TV. And it makes you feel all warm, fuzzy in your tum-tum. Thankfully, the age of camera phones hasn't killed this off, but that's mostly because WWE's edict has always been, well, if it doesn't happen on Raw, it doesn't happen on SmackDown, we're never going to acknowledge it. But saying that, they still don't really want some things from these shows to get out there. Why? Broken hand, here's why. Now, I will caveat this that no, WWE does not care if any of this stuff got mentioned. They just don't want to put it on their main roster television because it would cause some problems. Actually, no, that's not true at all. Even if it was accidentally talked about, the next week, they would just pretend no one said anything. The first crazy thing that did come out of it, though, is the fact that Ronda Rousey was taking on Charlotte Flair in a champion contender match, or whatever the hell we're calling it these days. The whole point was the title is on the line. Now, we do this in order to get everybody excited, like, oh, we're going to the O2 Arena and we get to see a championship match. And if you're a kid, you believe that it may happen. But if you're a nerd adult like me, you're like, ooh, well, it's not going to because it's just a house show. But given that when I did go, WrestleMania Backlash was literally the following weekend, you knew what they were doing here. But again, the younger generation has no clue, so after Ronda Rousey had hit the Piper's Pit onto Flair, the referee went 1, the referee went 2, the referee went 3, and a bunch of children lost their minds. I'm not going to pretend either. I lost my mind too. I can't help it. When I'm there, I just go, yes. Much like Mania though, this was a massive screw job, and it turned out that Charlotte's Flair foot had accidentally gone under the rope or on the rope, one of the two. The referee restarted the thing, and when Ronda was going, how dare you do this? The decision should be final. Charlotte flew in. She hit the natural selection. She stole the pin, and that was that. Now, as always, this did leave kids everywhere scratching their heads, and I was like, man, poor people. They have no idea what their future holds. But the main reason for doing this is that Charlotte and Ronda could start to hone their skills before they did get to their premium main event contest. This, of course, allowed Rousey to become the SmackDown Women's Champion on that night. But it's so fascinating to watch how the machine works. This is where you get some practice, and we'll shove some minimal story in there for good measure. And of course, you don't want anyone to know that Ronda Rousey lost again because she is a super duper star. But what actually shocked me more is when we got to our main event of the night, which was indeed Drew McIntyre versus Roman Reigns. Now, they weren't doing this on the European tour on every single night. I think they only did it in London and maybe in Paris. So I was like, well, I wonder what they're gonna do. I mean, we are yet to see them square off 1-1 in 2002, so it did have some novelty to it. And while Roman Reigns was meant to be the heel here, of course he got crazy cheers, but so did Drew because he was the hometown hero. However, when it comes to the latter, it don't matter that he came back to where he was born. He got absolutely murked. I mean, the match went way longer than I was expecting to. I think it almost hit 30 minutes. And for a good chunk of time, this was just our tribal chief decimating the Scottish Warrior. I mean, he had the odd flurry and the big comeback, but for a good 20 minutes, it was just Roman going, Bush, Bush, and some kid was like, stop, stop, he's already dead. And look, there was no way that McIntyre was ever going to win because the WWE Unified Championship, up, down, left, right, was on the line. But even then, at no point did I even think he had a chance. And this absolutely tied into the finish too, because finally when Drew was on the front foot, he went for the Claymore. He got speared for the second time. That was it. 1, 2, 3. There wasn't even an Uso-related flub finish. It was still a joy, especially because our tribal chief was playing conductor with the crowd in order to make them go louder and then go quieter. But imagine we did something like this at SummerSlam. You got a half-hour matchup that was Roman Reigns trying to kill Drew McIntyre. I mean, you wouldn't go on Reddit the next day because they'd be going crazy. What stood out the most, though, is that it was smart wrestlers being smart, because as we know, if you are a sports entertainer, to use their word, you are going around the world sacrificing your body constantly. So if you do turn up to an event and you know the result doesn't matter because it's not going to be broadcast on TV, you don't throw yourself around the squared circle, you keep things slow and you keep things calm. I think the most extreme move I saw here was a big slam. I mean, work smart, not hard is the best advice always given to wrestlers. I'm not saying this wasn't a decent match because it was, and if you had no clue, you'd just be like, oh man, I'm having a great time. But when you do, because you're a massive geek like you and I, kind of feels like you're part of the inner circle. This also means in many ways, if you do witness it, you have just seen a very unique match, because again, there ain't no way they would ever do this on a premium live event. Most people would give it a thumbs down. Not me, but I'm a positive Pete. The highlight of it all, though, did come down to Bobby Lashley, because I'm sure you saw the footage that was doing the rounds on social media. The night before, when he actually was fighting Drew McIntyre, he went to hit the ropes, the flipping ring broke, and Bobby Lashley went tumbling out to the floor. And the first time I saw it, I thought, oh my gosh, he's dead. Now, because he's built like an aeroplane, he was okay, but this was some scary, scary stuff. As soon as he was out to fight Sheamus 24 hours later, however, do you know how he started this match? He went to one set of ropes, he checked it. He went to the other, he went to the third, he went to the fourth. He went over the whole ring to make sure it wasn't going to implode. He got a massive cheer from the fans. He had the biggest smile on his face. I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And of course it was a minor thing, but I tell you, not only did it make my night, but these are the small tiny details we probably could do on Raw and SmackDown, because it takes a story and it connects it together. It was also appreciated by everybody in the arena, as was the fact that Butch was allowed to wrestle like Pete Dunne. Yep. We haven't seen much of that on Friday nights because he has been given his character and you gotta do what your boss asks. But after he had done the whole, oh my gosh, I'm missing, and he had come through the crowd, he got in that ring to face Sami Zayn and Ricochet, and I tell you, if you are familiar with the Bruiserweight, NXT or indie work, you would have been over the moon. And I can't pretend that I don't like this persona because I get a weird kick out of it, but if we can add all of this stuff into what he's doing right now, there is no reason Butch couldn't go on to do far greater things than many people currently imagine he will. I get he's not the biggest guy in the world, but this doesn't matter. It's another good reason you should go and see live wrestling. Was he like discernibly different size from a Ricochet or a Sami Zayn? No, and he more than held his own. This may have been the best match of the night. So this is the real joy, because Vince McMahon isn't going to fly over to London in order to watch this, which means the wrestlers get a bunch of more freedom. And of course they still have agents saying, oh, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that. But if you do want to go out there and do something completely out of left field, well, the worst you're going to get is a bit of a ticket off. I don't want to be that guy too, but I do think sometimes WWE can stick too rigidly to their playbook, because when you give these creative individuals the freedom to do a little bit more, they always come up with creative stuff. And of course, certain tropes still existed here, but if you took this triple threat match and, I don't know, did it at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, I bet it wouldn't resemble this one. And I would also bet that maybe, just maybe, I would prefer the one I saw live with my eyes. This is why, once again, I strongly do always advise somebody to check out a house show if you've never done it before. I mean, look at that clip that again was doing the rounds on social media when it came to Randy Orton. Now, fair enough, this was on a dark match, I believe on Raw, maybe it was SmackDown, it doesn't really make a difference. The cameras were off, and when somebody was about to do a big dive, Randy was like 10 feet down the aisleway, and a fan said, Orton, what are you doing? He just looked up and said, well, I don't want to get landed on, because Randy Orton is the greatest wrestler ever. I mean, he has officially entered